Hey, welcome back, Mastercrafted Gaming fans. So, Caleb and Kyle here with you tonight. Tonight we're going to do something a little different because we're getting the feeling, frankly, you guys might be a little sick and tired of seeing Undead versus Herd. Maybe.
We're working on it.
Yeah. I got my Ogre armies in the mail today. Kyle's actually got some Twilight Kin already assembled and starting to get them on base, so good times there. So, but what we're going to do tonight is a tactics video, and this is going to be a series of ones we're going to do to kind of change it up, because you've seen that I will beat his ass every time with the Herd versus Undead. No? Oh.
You're what, 1 and 3?
I'm like 1, 2, and 3. Shut up. So what we're going to focus on is actually what I did to him last time. We're going to talk about a deployment style that I used, and then why I was successful, and why it's something I've used in other games, and why I think it is a really good strategy for, especially for people that are getting into the game that may not have 100% understanding of the nuance of the movement of Kings of War.
This is kind of one-on-one stuff. So what we're doing is very basic strategy. Fantasy wargaming works completely different from any kind of sci-fi, especially if you've been playing 40K, things like that we have a lot of members in our group that do. And we want to make sure that those new members have a grasp of how that movement has to do with everything, and it starts with deployment. So what this is a series that will base deployment-based strategy into tactics on individual unit levels. So Caleb's going to talk to you about what he put down, why he put it there, and then what the direction is. I'm going to talk to you about what you can do to maybe potentially stop it, or how to counter-deploy.
So this is where roughly about a 2,000 point list. It's very similar to what I took last time against Kyle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through why I laid out things where I did. So what I got here is a regiment of chariots. Here I've got a unit of tribal hunters, a stampede, horde of spirit walkers are called now, another horde of them. I don't have any upgrades on these, so bear with me. Tribal hunters, a brutox, tribal chieftain on chariot, longhorns, centaur bray hunters, shaman and shaman. So as you see, I've got my anchor units. I'm going to call them anchor. I just thought of this before we were talking. I got them here in the center. And why do I have them there? They are here simply to engage the enemy, his big blocks, maybe his, if he deploys badly, his chariots, his cavalry, dragons, whatever I can get my hands on, because with these units, they're fearless. You know, they don't have a wavering limit, so they're going to grind. You know, they might have low defense, but they're going to grind. You got 3 turns realistically before you get them off the board.
He's got his flanks basically defended from the table edge. That table edge, and then this anchor/anvil unit is basically dividing his army right in half. And there's a center line here, and he's almost sitting directly on top of it. So we can see that they're the core, but the attack comes from the sides.
And something else to point out, most of your more competitive games, you're going to have some sort of objective or loot. You're going to have something you're going to be chasing down. So this could flip-flop depending on what side I have heavy. I have this side a little bit heavy right now. That could flip-flop depending on where, because one of the things I would absolutely consider doing is just totally coming in this way. It's something I'm able to do. I've got speed on the edges, both sides here. Right here on the flanks of my hordes, I've got a good speed. It's not amazing speed, but it's good speed. Here in front, I've got my solid chaff units that I have a vanguard move on if I need to take advantage of it, which if I'm facing a flyer heavy armor, I'm probably not going to do. What I've also done is I've spread out my shooting. Shooting here, shooting here, shooting here, shooting here, shooting here. All those units are going to target chaff. They're going to target other units that can shoot back. Anything that's got a nerve of 9/11, 10/12, I need 1 or 2 wounds, and then I get lucky on that route nerve roll. I can maybe waver them. I can get them to run off the board, which I did against a buddy of ours.
Yeah.
That's who I'm going to target. I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not going to take long shots on a vampire lord on a dragon. Why am I going to do that? It's senseless.
But I think another important thing to do with them is to soften up the targets that you're directly across with, so that you can get that deeper penetration on the sides that you're aiming for with those units. So you get a couple of wounds on them, you make that initial charge way more successful.
Yes, absolutely.
Raise your chances of doing it. So
absolutely. Now, with your first move, if you're going first, you don't want to be so crazy aggressive that you're not picking your fights. Because with this, and what Kyle came up with earlier, I didn't even think to call it this, is called the pincher. Because I have the option. I'm going to envelop you, and I'm going to come in, I'm going to collapse on the center, or I'm going to just go this way or that way. I have those options. So, with that being said, I want to pick my fights. because I don't want to just get my big anvil anchor units up there and then get them charged by a bunch of crap. What good does that do me? I got to protect their flanks the whole time. I got to make sure if I'm facing heavy flyers across the table, I got stuff to my sides that I can flip around and pivot to really discourage that rear charge. That if you want to come get it, you're going to pay a price for it. So that's why I've got things laid out the way I do. Is this the be-all, end-all? No. Is this going to win you Clash of Kings? Well, of course it no. No, not at all.
What do we always say? Everybody's got a plan.
Till you get punched in the face. And that, we can't highlight enough.
Yeah.
So at the same time, this gives me flexibility. If I've got to, because I got the Brutox with good speed, the Stampede, if I got to move them in front of my anchor anvil units, I can then decide, hey, I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to split them off this way. I have those options. You never know what you're going to face across the table. You've got to be flexible. This is a solid deployment, though, because you've got options on from left to right and right to left. You're not stuck with any strategy because you've got the fast stuff in the middle and then on the ends, and the stuff that's not quite as fast in the middle. Now, a lucky thing for me, the Herd Army's got Pathfinder. So terrain, I go FU, I don't care, put it in front of me. I'll deploy these guys in terrain. So I have an advantage with this army that way. I won't have it with Ogres at all. Which Ogres is a whole different deployment than this. That's
another strategy video.
Yeah, that's not something I can lay out this way. So Kyle, when you see this laid down,
it's something that Kings of War is unique because you go back and forth on deployment, unless you're taking the Scrying Gem, I think whatever it's called,
the
one
D3.
that gives you D3+1
yes,
to your opponent's deployments. You're going to go back and forth, and you need to be paying attention because more than likely he's going to put these down first. Possibly, you never know. Those heavy hitters, whatever, something that's going to tip his hand as to what kind of a strategy he's looking to achieve. What I want to do on the other end of that, if I see this and I know I have the opportunity to counter deploy from this, basically my options are few. Because I'm a guy who puts my hordes down first, and that's a dangerous situation here. Ultimately, if I have my anvil units on the flanks and force him to have to charge those units, those high nerve phalanx, things that ensnare, those heavy pike blocks, those elite pike blocks, like Kingdoms of Men has some really nice stuff to counter this kind of an army. And every army is going to have a different advantage, but ultimately, that's my best bet. If these flank charges fail, if I can somehow get this to not happen on the sides, I stand a chance against this kind of an attack. Then you got to think to yourself, what strategy do I have? Am I just defending against what he's doing, or do I have my own strategy? This is very much a rock, paper, scissors situation with deployments, because based on how you deploy, it could entirely alter what I'm doing. All of a sudden, I'm doing an anti-strategy because I have to throw what I've done to the wind just to counter what you're doing. Because if I see that you've got a plan that's way better designed than what mine is from the start, I got to bail out of that pretty quickly. So the opponent that comes with a game plan in mind typically is the opponent that's going to do well.
And I'll look back at something, and there's a part of this we haven't mentioned yet, but when it comes down to list building, you want to be aware that MSU is your friend. Having more deployment options. Because I got no problem. When I lay out this deployment, I'm going to lay out the fast stuff at the ends. I'm telling you, this is what I'm going to do. This is what you've got to deal with. And there's a psychology to that. Absolutely. And I got no problem doing that. And then I'll mix and match what I want, because I know the hordes are going in the middle. I'm not going to put them on the end unsupported. That's silly. I need them in the middle. But the rest of the stuff, that's where I can get crazy with it, and I can do some good things. I put the Brutox and the Stampede on one side, if he's got a lot of his cavalry there, because I like the way they match up. You got to do a little math in your head, and you got to look and go, okay, right there, I got a horde of skeletons, a horde of zombies, whatever it may be. What's my best option to take them down? So there's some big thinking here. This is not a light version of any game. So I know we hark on that a lot, and that it is not a light version of any game. Another thing, protecting your hordes. Don't be afraid to move them into terrain. You need these guys to last. They're going to be worth a lot of points, victory points wise, for most of your armies. Unless you're skeletons, I guess. What's your hordes? $1.25 for 80. But don't be afraid to move them in terrain, because you don't necessarily have to get the charge off with them. You got to have them survive. And having them in terrain, getting that -1 to hit that first time they get charged, When you got stuff on the sides to help support them, now they're going to be okay.
It's very tempting when you're building a list or coming up with an army in the first place to always go for the things that are those elite killers, the things that are just the sexy units, the ones that are actually going to do something and do well with it. But Caleb wins most of his games from these piddly chaff units, the things that are throwaway support units, because you do so much with them tactically, strategically, that you can't put a price to.
Pick your fights, pick your deployment. Don't care what the other guy does. He's got a plan. Just punch him in the face. Thanks for checking out our video. You got anything to add?
We got a lot more coming up, so several more videos just like this. If you like this one, let us know, because we'll continue to do it. I've got at least 5 down on a sheet that I prepared just for tonight, so we'll see what we get through, and hope you guys like what we're doing.
And I don't think I sound like Robert Downey Jr. Thanks, guys.